If you're curious what's going on with grading, what types of cards are best to grade with each company, and what the future for grading might look like, then this episode is for you. Hello, and here we go. Welcome to another episode of the Geoff Wilson Show, and this is a good one. We are diving deep into the world of grading because grading is a pretty complicated world. There's a lot of different companies providing grading services. Some are ideal for certain types of cards. Others are ideal for other types of cards. Some may give you bigger profits if you get a good grade, but some will also cost you a lot of money. So there's a lot of things to talk about in regards to grading and also where this is all headed. What do we think the future of grading and the future of these different companies are going to look like? This is going to be a fun discussion, and I am bringing in a true grading expert today to have this discussion with me. Joe Davis from Got Baseball Cards has graded tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of cards through his card shop, Got Baseball Cards, and through our grading partnership that we have with him here at Sports Card Investor. So he is definitely the right man to provide us with all the insights into the world of grading. And Joe, welcome to the Geoff Wilson Show. I'm excited to have you here in our Atlanta studio.
Great to be here, Geoff.
Yeah, thanks for making the drive out. Now, Joe, your card shop is here in Atlanta, but you're a little ways from the studio. You're out in the suburbs a little bit.
45 minutes or so.
45 minutes or so, but it's great to have you here today. And you've been grading since the early days of grading. You know, you've had your card shop for many years, for what,
32 years
32 years now.
Yeah. Started grading with PSA and SGC back in 98.
Back in 1998.
Yeah.
And those were in the early days.
Yes.
That was when, back then, you know, I've heard about the sentiment that when grading kind of came onto the scene, that there were a lot of dealers that were skeptical of it. A lot of dealers said, we don't need this. This doesn't make sense. Who wants to put their card inside a slab permanently?
Right.
There's a lot of skepticism. What was it like in 98? Were there more believers at that point, or was there still a healthy amount of skepticism?
There was still a lot of skepticism. I mean, it took me a while. I mean, I would go to nationals and PSA had started setting up, and I was just like, I know how to grade cards. Why do I need to pay them to do it? You know, but then I started realizing there was such value between, you know, there's so many cards that are altered, there's so many counterfeits, there's so many reasons why having cards graded can be beneficial to the consumer, especially on the higher end stuff.
When I got back into the sports card hobby, grading was one of the things that I immediately noticed as one of the big differences between when I was a collector as a kid in the 80s and then when I got back into it about 5 years ago. And grading was actually one of the things that gave me confidence that the sports card hobby was going to get huge again and was going to sustain that popularity. Because I said, you know what, this was a big problem back in the 80s, that there was, you know, the condition of cards was always a question mark. Is that one really mint or not?
Exactly.
Is that one near mint or is that one just good? You know, that was always a gray area.
Sure.
And then, as you said, there were counterfeits. There were a lot of challenges with that. And particularly when it came to online selling, to me, the combination of grading with online selling has been revolutionary because before grading, you couldn't really understand the exact condition of any card that you were buying online, which, you know, for lower end cards or cards for your personal collection, that may not matter as much. But if you're buying a really high end card, if you're buying more of an investment grade card, you want to understand the condition of that with precision. And that's a little harder to do when you're not seeing the card in person, but grading levels the playing field. Grading makes it, it gives it a, you know, the third party, you know, authentication and the third party, you know, grade that allows you to know what you're buying.
Exactly. We started selling on eBay in 1998, the same year we started working with PSA and SGC. And we saw that, you know, it was just like lightning, you know, just like, okay, online buyers love the fact that they can get a card. They know the condition, they know the standard, and they feel safe, confident buying it. And that reason holds even more true today.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about what grading was like back then and how it has impacted the hobby so greatly over the last 25 years, but how back then it was just in its infancy.
Right.
What has changed most since, let's say, maybe the first 5 or 10 years that you were offering grading services? It was originally PSA, and then I think you added Beckett when they started grading as well. And when approximately was that?
Yeah, I believe Beckett launched, I think it was 01 or 02.
Okay.
So
Beckett
as
launched
soon as they launched BGS, we started working with them as well.
So what's changed the most since like those, kind of early to mid 2000s and today when it comes to grading?
I mean, for us early on, we focused on vintage because it made sense, that it didn't seem as logical to grade a bunch of modern cards that were packed fresh. But now, of course, modern, ultra modern is what more, the largest percentage of cards being graded are the newest cards being released, Bowman Chrome, Topps Chrome, etc. So for us originally, and with consumers submitting through us, originally we saw a lot more vintage, but that's definitely shifted to now. As soon as you open a pack of a new product, your first thought is, okay, I got to get this card graded now.
Yeah.
And so that's been a dramatic shift. I mean, our showcases in our old store back in Avondale back in the late 90s was filled with vintage graded cards. And now, of course, we have a wide variety of both vintage and modern.
I become almost so addicted to grading. I become almost so addicted to having my cards in slabs.
Yep.
That just about every card of importance to me, even if it doesn't have a lot of value, even if it's just of importance, just a PC card that I really like, I want it in a graded slab. I want it that way. I have a bunch of cards which I didn't, when I bought them, they were for PC, so I didn't care so much about condition. And these are cards that, have no chance at a gem mint type of grade.
Right.
But I still want them in a slab. I have been sending, a bunch of cards recently to PSA and saying, just authenticate them, on the value level, just authenticate them just because I want them in the slab. And some people may think that's silly, but like I'm willing to pay the $19 or the $25 or, whatever the different levels are,
right,
just to have it slabbed, because I feel like it displays better that way. And
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I have plenty of PC cards that I'll never sell that I've sent off to PSA or some to SGC as well, and some to BGS, depending on the card. But I'm the same way. I'm actually working on a 1962 Flintstones dynamic toy set, which is super tough non-sport set, and then I've been getting those graded. So
That's fun.
I'm the same way.
That's a lot. And then of course you can do the set registry and all that kind of stuff, which which is a lot of fun if you go in that direction. Well, I want to dig into what's going on with the grading companies today and
Sure,
where people should be grading and what the future might look like. But first, I want to let the audience know that we've got a special grading partnership together,
right,
for anybody out there who wants to grade your own cards, whether it's with PSA or SGC, or we do some business as well with BGS and others. The best place to do that, in our opinions, is by going to sportscardinvestor.com and clicking on grading in the main menu bar. Joe, tell everybody a little bit about the benefit of submitting cards through a bulk submitter such as yourself versus going direct, because that's two different business models. Some people send their cards direct to the to PSA or BGS or SGC, and others prefer to go through bulk submitters. You're one of the biggest bulk submitters in the nation. Why go through a bulk submitter?
Yeah, well, I'll give the sales pitch why we believe we're the best bulk submitter by the services, because we offer services that are different than others. One of the biggest, probably the biggest benefit using us is that if someone is not an expert at examining cards, as we are and our team are, is that we will pre-screen the cards for them. We have customers send us, say, 300 cards. We pre-screen them for them. We send them images of every card that we consider a reject, meaning like we don't believe this is going to be a 9 or 10 if we're talking modern cards. And we literally mark up on the sleeve what the issue with the card is. We put an estimate of the grade. We send that back to the submitter, and then they can make the final decision if they want to submit the cards or not. We don't charge anything for doing the screening itself. I mean, somebody may send us 100 cards. We pass all 100. There's no additional charge for that. If they choose not to submit them, then we only charge $2 on the ones that they choose to be rejected and not sent in. But beyond that, we offer basically the same type of pricing, but we include shipping back to the customer if they're sending 20 cards or more. We do all the legwork. We do all the manual. We help them figure out which level they should send the cards at. There's so many benefits, which is why we've now got over 5,300 submitters that send through us. We've been doing it, I think, longer than any other group submitter, and we believe we have the best system in place to work with, and they can even submit with us, and then they can consign with us. So there's a lot of additional benefits to working with us.
The free shipping thing is not something to sleep on, because I can tell you, I've shipped some things off directly to PSA recently, and man, do they hit you with those return shipping charges.
It's like $30 plus for
easy.
one card.
For one card. BGS and SGC as well, they hit you with those return shipping charges. So that is not a small deal. That makes a lot of sense. And of course, the pre-screening for a lot of people is really, really nice, for especially for folks who haven't done a high volume of grading. And so they're not really sure, does this have a chance at a 10? Does this have a chance at a 9? How critically are they going to look at this corner or this surface issue or anything like that? It's nice to have a professional, in many cases, save money, because what you see often is that people, the first few times they try to submit cards for grading, they get a lot lower grades than they expect, because they haven't learned yet to look at things like, surface issues under different lighting and everything like that.
One of the other things too is we've saved customers thousands of dollars on counterfeits. We see numerous Jordan rookies come through that are counterfeits. We've had Mantle rookies graded. We've had, T206, just you name it. You think of a counterfeit, we've probably examined one.
Yeah.
And especially with PSA, you're talking several $100s per card to grade some of those if they're authentic. And so we hey, this is counterfeit. That's going to cost you $2.
Right.
Save them hundreds of dollars. So especially those who are buying random cards on eBay, especially with vintage, can be a huge cost saver for them.
That must not be fun news to deliver to somebody.
It's very painful. It's very painful, because we've literally had entire submissions of counterfeits come in, and we'll kind of hey, your 50 cards, not one of them is worth submitting. And they're like, do what? But I bought this from, and they name some. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, it's still counterfeit, no matter who you bought it from. So it's very painful news to have to deliver.
Yeah, and I know eBay added their authenticity guarantee recently.
Right.
Hopefully that will start to cut down on some of that kind of stuff. But that's the rough side of the sports card market for sure. But it speaks to the importance of grading, and it also speaks to the importance of your pre-screening service. So anyway, anyone out there who's interested in submitting cards to Joe to have him do the pre-screening and handle the grading and get the free return shipping, go to sportscardinvestor.com and click grading in the main menu bar, and that's how you do that. All right, Joe, let's talk about the different companies. There's been a lot of changes with grading over the last few years, even since we've been doing our partnership together, which is a little bit, I think, over 3 years now. We've had a grading partnership. We've seen wild swings. I mean, we've seen PSA go from, being the one that everyone was submitting to basically completely closing their doors for a year. And then, now they're back into a position where they're taking a ton of submissions again. We've
Cranking
seen
1 million cards a month.
Yeah. We've seen SGC, become super popular, then have to close their doors. Now SGC's kind of cut out a really interesting niche of the market for themselves we're going to talk about. We've seen BGS, kind of, we're going to talk about that. I don't know what's going on with that. We've seen CSG. They've made some changes, now I guess there's CGC.
They keep changing holders.
Holders and grading scales and what they're calling themselves. That's all changed. We've seen some others, Tag and ISA, and we're going to talk about all of that. But let's start with PSA, because PSA is the big one. You're seeing, I think, by far the most submissions for PSA.
I'd say PSA is probably 85% of our submissions right now.
And that makes sense, because if you look at the overall grading numbers per month, you got PSA that's outputting around 1 million cards a month graded.
Yeah.
And then you got SGC in second place, and they're somewhere around 100,000 depending on the month, right? Yeah. So it makes sense that you'd see about 85%, PSA. PSA has obviously made great strides over the last year in making grading more affordable again. They've introduced, you got your value levels, you get discounts for bulk, all that kind of thing. And their turnaround times have improved considerably as well. Oh, yeah. What are you seeing right now? So when customers are sending you cards to grade, and you're packaging them up and sending them to PSA, what are you typically seeing in terms of turnaround times now?
I mean, on the lowest level, typically we're seeing 2 to 3 months. But I had one just come back this week that was only there for a month, and I'm like, okay, this is great. If they could land that on every order would be great, but typically 2 to 3 months.
And pricing wise, what does that look like at the lowest level?
As low as $20. If they're doing, if submitters are sending 20 or more cards, it's $20. That's including return shipping.
Including return shipping and including the pre-screening, unless it's a reject.
Right.
So okay, so that has definitely become more affordable and
From
faster.
where we were. Oh, yeah, dramatic.
Even a year ago, PSA
Yes.
was slower and not as affordable, and so we've seen great strides in that department. PSA seems to have the reputation, maybe more strongly than ever today, with the grading company that's going to return the most value, particularly on the high-end items. Like it seems like that's an area where PSA and BGS really used to compete. And SGC and vintage. SGC,
Correct.
I will say, in vintage, SGC is very, very strong.
Yes, they are.
In ultra-modern, they're very strong, but more on the lower end. We'll talk about that. Yeah. But PSA, for higher end, particularly ultra-modern, seems to have increased its importance and market share in the space while you've seen BGS kind of fall back in that space. Is that...
Yeah, it's the same thing I'm seeing.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a collector at the National. I had a BGS 9.5 Curry Chrome rookie, and he was like, well, I just paid $24,000 for a PSA 10, and the BGS 9.5 was, we were at around 12 or 12.5, and, that's half of the PSA, and he passed on it. So it's like, okay, you just paid double that for a PSA. But, it used to be the rule of thumb not too long ago where you would see BGS around 70%, 75%. But now there are some instances on the real premium cards where it's less than that. So that's disappointing because I think the grading standard is very similar.
Yeah.
But just the resale is just not there. I just don't think I don't know what all the issues are, but the marketing doesn't seem to be there right now to drive the collectors to their brand. And they had the whole fiasco with, are we going to change it to a 10 scale or now we're sticking with a 9.5, and I think that frustrated a lot of. I mean, I was one who was saying, "Hey, I think you should have 10 should be your gym mint," because
you and I talked about that ahead of time. That we really thought that Beckett having the 9.5 as their gem mint was actually hurting them.
Yeah. I believe
in the psychology of new collectors, right? Like people who have been around the industry for 20 years, they were always used to that. And so that was okay for them. But for all the new people that have come in over the last 5 years, of which there are many, it seemed like they could never mentally get over the fact that one company's 9.5 was equivalent to another company's 10.
It's hard to sell new collectors on that.
Yeah, they just gravitated towards the 10,
Yeah.
And that makes sense to me. You want the perfect 10 score. I mean, if you're in a gymnastics competition, you want that. You don't want a 9.5. You want a 10. Like everyone gravitates towards the 10. That's the perfect score.
Right.
So I think that's a challenge that Beckett's had, along with a litany of other things. I guess that idea that they were going to change their grading scale, which they announced at the Mint Collective, and then they quickly retracted. Then they had this whole series of meetings with different collectors. I was part of some of those to get their feedback. You were part of one of those. And then they sent out a big survey to collectors to get their feedback.
Right.
I've never heard anything about it since.
No, I really thought the National, they'll roll something out.
I did too. That was my prediction.
We get there and I'm like, okay, nothing.
I thought that the reason why they hadn't ever said anything publicly about it again was because at the National, they were going to make a big splashy announcement that they were updating their grading scale, and it was going to be the talk of the National. That's what I thought they were going to do.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
I know.
And so now I just assume that the whole Beckett, we're going to change our grading scale thing, I assume that's dead. I kind of want them to come out and officially say it's dead, or say what they're...
we've made a decision, because there's plenty of collectors still wondering, like, okay, am I going to be able to, is this going to happen? Is it not going to happen? I think collectors hate uncertainty. I think they would like to know one way or the other what the plans are.
I hate uncertainty too. Yeah. I mean, there was actually a moment at the Mint Collective where, this announcement had been made. I went and bought from a dealer booth a Gem Mint Plus Shohei Ohtani card. It was about $6,000 card. And I overpaid for it a little bit based on recent comps. I bought it specifically because it was a Gem Mint Plus. It was a 9.5, 9.5, 9.5, 10.
Right.
Or it might have even been two 9.5s and two 10s. And I said, I'm going to walk this over to the Beckett booth.
Get it reslide.
And this will be a 10. And I said, I bet that is going to, I was almost an experiment that I wanted to run. But my theory was I could overpay for the 9.5 a little bit, go reslab it as a 10, and then immediately, sell it. And I believed it was going to sell for more.
Sure. It would have, in my opinion.
It probably would have, right? And so I bought the card. And then I walked up to the Beckett booth to get in line. And I literally, so we're doing a vlog, and so the camera's with me, and so I'm telling the camera, I'm like, so I'm in line, I'm going to submit this, this will become one of the first 10s. They're going to do it here at the show, and then the head of marketing at Beckett hears me saying, and he walks over to me, he goes, "Hey, we're not doing that. We need to talk." I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, we've decided based on the feedback that we've received over the last 24 hours that we're actually not going to do the 10 thing right now. We're going to, I'm like, wait a minute. I just bought the card.
Right.
What's going on, Beckett? So, that was it. That's how I found out, literally in line.
It's a painful way to find out after you've already bought the card at a premium.
And paid a premium for it too.
Right.
It was a painful way to find out. So that was not my favorite Beckett move, at the moment.
Yeah, there's been a lot of frustration with a lot of collectors with the state of things there. So I hope they get their ducks in a row, come up with, like I said, it would be nice to know what the plan is.
I really hope, look, Beckett has the name that is synonymous with the hobby. Yeah. It's the biggest name company.
You and I both have tremendous respect for Jim Beckett.
Yeah, 100%. Love Dr. Beckett and the company he created. He's no longer involved with it in an official capacity.
Right.
He
has the history, but the
history, and so I would love to see them rise to prominence again. But it seems like it's been hard watching them fall and watching the value of their cards fall in the secondary market, which has been the pattern over the last many, many months and even many years. And in fact, so much so, you told me a story once, which just astounded me, that in the 2000s, there was a moment in time when a Beckett 9.5 was selling for more than a PSA 10.
Yeah, I remember. I think the one you're thinking of is, I had a customer give me a PSA 10 Jordan rookie, and he said, "Will you please take it to the National and see if this will cross to a BGS 9.5?" And it did. I took it to BGS, and they examined it and crossed it, and he was ecstatic. He goes, "Thank you so much, Joe. I'm so excited. This is great. Now I've got a 9.5 Jordan rookie instead of a PSA 10." So yes, that's been a while.
Can you imagine? That's so that is so funny for me to think about today, when everything in the hobby is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to cross a 9.5 over to a 10.
Right.
That's amazing to think about. What a story that is. And I tell you what, I feel bad for that. I feel bad for that collector
hundreds
now.
Of thousands. Yeah, did he give up?
I feel bad for him. Of course, who knows? Maybe 15 years from now, it will all be the opposite.
You never know.
You never know what's going to happen. Yeah. Maybe everyone will want the 9.5s again in 15 years. Who knows? All right. So we've talked a bit about PSA. We've talked a bit about BGS. We just kind of naturally got into that conversation. What about SGC? SGC is kind of I think of them as the upstart, even though that's not the case, even though they've actually
been around 25 years.
They've been around for as long as, PSA grading. But I think of them as the upstart because they were mainly entirely vintage up until the pandemic.
Best known for it. Right.
And they were small company. And then they got aggressive and they hired a new CEO, a president, Peter, who,
He's awesome.
Great guy. I've had great interactions with him, and they just they've expanded rapidly. They just expanded again. They just added another, a big expansion onto their office, and they're this company that's got kind of this hunger, and they're going after the low. They seem to be best, in my opinion, at the moment, for the lower end of the market, not because their quality is any different necessarily than the other companies that, and actually in a lot of cases, their gem rate is lower. Their grading is actually tougher than PSA. But for whatever reason, the perception is their slabs aren't as valuable.
Right.
So you see their cards not sell for as much on the secondary market. A PSA 10 is going to outsell an SGC 10.
Right.
When you get to high-end cards, non-vintage. Vintage is a different story. Vintage, oftentimes, SGC and PSA will be close.
Right.
Modern specifically, PSA 10s outsell SGC 10s, often by a wide margin.
Right, just like they do BGS. Right.
But that matters more on the high end of the market.
Yeah.
It matters less on the low end of the market. The dollars tend to be a little closer. Where do you think SGC is? What do you see SGC's kind of advantages and disadvantages right now?
Well, the biggest advantage with SGC for submitters wanting to choose a company is the turnaround time is phenomenal. I mean, we've had a number of orders sent to SGC. From the time they receive it to the time they get it back out the door is under 2 weeks. And so I'm not guaranteeing they're maintaining that right now, but typically when we get it in to the time it's back to the customer is about a month or 5 weeks, and that's on the entry level, which is as low as $19 in quantity. And so, great turnaround time, still very good resale. Again, still highly respected in the vintage market, more so than on the modern, but we're seeing more and more sent to them on the modern. They're actually running a special with us right now and, through SCI for $12 for Pokemon grading. Mm-hmm. So for those, because they're really trying to capture more of the Pokemon grading market. So, and again, it's still a quick turnaround. So for those who want a quality holder and a really, really good turnaround time at a reasonable price, SGC is a great alternative right now.
I think where SGC really shines is new releases being the first to grade. If you're either ripping and you want to grade and sell, mm-hmm. or if you're looking to buy raw and flip, what you see, like I was just looking at stats from like when Top Series 1 released earlier this year. I was looking at players like Michael Harris, his rookie card, and what it was selling for in an SGC 10 versus a PSA 10. What you would see is that there would be SGC 10s that would hit the market, that would hit eBay 3 or 4 weeks
correct
before any PSA 10s ever showed up.
Yep.
The reason why is because SGC is a lot quicker to grade.
Yes.
During that first few weeks, those SGC 10s were selling for the same price that the PSA 10s would sell for later when they got to the market.
Because there was market saturation. By then there were more on the market. So
now over time, the PSA 10s became more valuable.
Right.
But those who were the early movers got a return for their SGC 10 that's really the same return they would have gotten if they had sent to PSA
and waited.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think there's an early mover advantage to grading with SGC that a lot of people don't realize. Yeah. They don't think about that. They just think about, well, the PSA 10 is more valuable than the SGC 10. That's only true once the cards have been out on the market for a while.
Exactly.
The first SGC 10s to hit the market, which always hit the market before PSA ones because their grading's quicker.
Right.
Those first ones are actually as valuable as those PSA 10s are going to be a few weeks later.
That's a great marketing strategy. So for those who rip early.
It's a little secret right now. There's a little secret in the hobby.
No charge for that free tip.
Right.
Yeah.
So I like him for that reason. As you said, I like SGC as a company. I think they've been, good about customer service. I think they've been good about
it's been great.
Being very proactive. I like that they do aggressive promotions and specials and all that type of thing. So I have a lot of hope for the future of SGC. It's been interesting watching SGC rise in the market as we've watched Beckett fall in the market.
Yeah, they're a solid number 2 a lot of months now.
I mean, if I told you 5 years ago, Joe, 5 years from now, SGC will have overtaken Beckett as the number 2 in the market.
I never would have believed
Would you believe that
No.
5 years ago?
No.
It's where we are.
You're right. Their customer service is phenomenal, and they have great leadership, and collectors respect them even if they don't bring the same value as PSA. I think they need more marketing dollars to just to grow their brand more. I mean, PSA is a household name, and SGC's just got to, if they want to move up, and instead of having 10% of PSA share to have 20% or whatever, more marketing is probably needed.
Yeah. And PSA grades a lot more things too. Like obviously I just got a ticket, graded by PSA, and I get PSA will grade packs. I've got packs, PSA graded packs, right? And then they get into other collectibles like Funko Pops and that kind of stuff as well.
Exactly.
I still, for the most part, like my strategy, high-end cards, for the most part, I'm putting to PSA, even though, by the way, you're going to get charged a heck of a lot more. A heck of a lot more.
Yeah, that is another huge benefit with both SGC and BGS, much lower grading costs. Yeah.
But for the most part, I'm going to grade my higher end with PSA because of the return you get on the secondary market.
Right.
Patch cards I will often grade with BGS because I feel like patch cards are so difficult to get a gem mint grade on that if I know I'm not likely to get a gem mint grade, I like the subgrades. Like,
Right.
I just feel like
Yeah, we still do get a lot of patch
Yeah.
submissions with BGS for
patches,
that same reason.
Yeah, patches make sense to BGS for me. And then for more kind of everyday cards, I think SGC is a great option. I think for lower end cards, I think for cards that are new to market, new releases, I think SGC is a great way to go for all of that.
Yeah, we see a lot of SGC when we get in collectors with like mid-grade vintage collections. I'll tell them like, look, the resale value is going to be similar here, and you're going to get it back a lot quicker. And now, if it's going to be a PSA 8 mantle, I'll say, yeah, PSA is probably the way to go. But on the 3, 4, 5, 6, the middle grades, often SGC resale is going to be closer, and they're going to have them back maybe 2 months quicker. So it's a great option.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, totally for vintage too. When I was kind of talking my preferences, I was talking ultra modern.
Right,
but
right.
For vintage, you're absolutely right. I just sent a 51 Bowman mantle to SGC to grade. It's probably in their grading room right now. That it was a low grade copy. It had some staining and that kind of stuff. And I looked on the secondary market to see what 51 Bowmans in low grades have done. And actually, the last few SGC sales have been above the last few PSA sales in the same grade.
And you're paying less grading.
And I'm paying a lower grading fee,
Right.
and I'm going to get it back a lot quicker.
Right.
So I'm like, yeah, why not go to SGC for that? That makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. There's definitely the advantages and disadvantages to each of them. What about the grading companies we haven't talked about? You've done business with CGC, CSG, CGC.
Right.
You've done business with them,
And we still offer them.
and you still offer them. They are obviously huge in comics. They're fairly big in trading card games like Pokemon.
Right.
They've been doing some volume of sports cards, but I feel like they haven't gained quite the traction.
They haven't hit the tipping point.
They haven't hit the tipping point,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Do you see that changing, or do you just see them almost kind of falling back out of the race a little bit?
I don't know. It's tough because you're right. Those who collect, like they do well, again, with the gaming, because you've got the comic book community already respects their brand for grading comic books, so therefore they get a lot of grading business there. They've struggled to really have a breakthrough in the sports card market. They have went from 3 iterations of, they had the green label CSG holder and then the black label CSG holder, which I liked, and now they've changed to rebranding everything under the CGC brand. And so that's been frustrating for some, including us, because we had graded a lot with them early on to try them out. And, I liked the new black label. I thought it was a lot better looking holder. But now it's like they're just getting all those reholders done. It's like, oh, now we're going to change to a CGC label, and you got to pay if you want to get those reholdered. And that's frustrated a lot of consumers.
Yeah.
Because they're like, okay, I just got some of these redone. Now I need to redo them again. And so I think that's been, I agreed with the first move. I didn't agree with the second move.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they just haven't. Now they are more affordable. I mean, through us, it's $12.50 a card, and in quantity. And I have a few just loyal submitters who love them, love their holder, and so
Their holder is really nice.
It is.
It's the clearest, I think,
Yes,
of the different
it's a very
companies.
nice holder.
It is a nice holder.
But resale value is definitely not there right now, relative to PSA for sure.
Yeah.
It's got a ways to go.
Yeah.
At least on the sports market.
Yeah.
I'm not as up on how their Pokemon resale is, because I've heard it's a lot stronger. But on the sports card market, it's definitely not where they want it to be. I'd say.
There's an interesting thing with grading, and that is that there's this huge difference sometimes in secondary market prices, yet oftentimes the actual quality of the product is very similar. Like I went up to ISA grading, which is a kind of an upstart. Jason Kuntz,
Yeah, I know Jason.
long time card collector and businessman in the hobby. He started ISA grading a few years ago. And we did a tour on their Sports Card Investor channel. I met with their graders. They graded cards. The process they go through, what they look for, what they look at, how they grade, their grading scale, it's essentially the same as the other grading companies, and I think, if you look at gem rates, and it's very similar across SGC's gem rates. Actually, SGC is a little tougher than the PSA sometimes, BGS, like all of these companies, for the most part, have competent graders that are looking at things they're looking for the same things. They're looking for corners and edges and surface and centering, but it's interesting how just the human psychology, the value perception of one versus another. I guess it's all about just the brand, right?
Yeah, and it comes out. I mean, the brand longevity that PSA has, and SGC,
Right.
and BGS too, but and continued marketing. I mean, PSA has so many connections with Golden, with there's just there's so many industry leaders that work with PSA, and that they continue to reinforce their reputation with every new auction, with every new every new catalog that comes out from an auction house, and 80% of it's PSA. What are people going to go to? So again, a lot of it boils down to marketing and market presence, and it's hard to crack, into that higher tier when PSA has such a control on it.
It is hard to crack, and then these upstart companies like ISA and there's others. I meet every time I go to a card show. I meet some new grading company. It seems
right,
and oftentimes their slabs are nice. Oftentimes their team seems knowledgeable. They seem like they know what they're doing. But that is an uphill battle to fight. It is a tough battle to fight. And I wish Jason all the luck in the world with ISA, and I hope that they can break into that upper echelon. And I know he's expanding and working hard to do so. It's just a tough battle. It's a tough battle for all these companies, to try to take on the, Goliath right now that is PSA. And then, behind them, you've got some pretty strong mini Goliaths in SGC and, BGS still there as well.
But all long established brands, all respected brands. And so, it's tough to get any market share when you've got them to compete with.
What do you think about the future, Joe? There's, tag grading, which has made a lot of noise over the last couple of years with their artificial intelligence, computer vision based grading. We've had some folks here at Sports Card Investor who, have sent a bunch of cards their way, really like their slabs. Their slabs are beautiful.
I like the people there. I mean, the little bit of interaction we've had has been very positive.
It seems to me like that is, bringing more artificial intelligence, computer vision into the process seems to me like it makes a lot of sense. It's also a tough nut to crack. There's so many different nuances to cards. And I've got to imagine the amount of work that it goes into to train these computer models on what 50-50 centering actually is on a card that has no clear border, right? I mean, you've got a lot of cards that these designs, like how do you tell if a kaboom is centered, right? It's like there's not a nice clean border. Like with a prism card, it's a lot easier to tell if it's centered, because you can look at the center image and the border around it and how it is in relation to the top and bottom and left and right. But there's a lot of cards, inserts and that which, you're trying to figure it out based upon other cards, or maybe it's the text on this side versus the text up there. That's a lot to train a computer model on.
It is.
I think over time, yes. Today, I don't know. And I haven't seen enough. I haven't seen enough from Tag on the market to really get a full sense of kind of where their technology is today. I like the promise, but where it is today, I'm not as sure.
Right. Yeah. And again, I have not submitted anything to them. I had talks with them when they were launching just to kind of learn what was going on. And they seem like great people, seem like they have a good vision for what they want to accomplish in the industry. So I'm not recommending or saying don't use them. I'm just saying it's very early. They're in their infancy. They seem to have a really nice setup, but when they're doing their shows, they have a very nice presentation of showing off their slab. They have a beautiful slab, and the concept is great. And I'm sure the industry is going to go more and more towards that. And I'm sure other companies will implement more and more of those features. Anything that doesn't require the human element, but I'm old school in the sense. This is why collectors travel all over the country to come see us. They want me to look through cards. They want our team, Doug, our head of grading, to look through stuff, because we've seen hundreds and hundreds of Jordan rookies. We've seen Mantle rookies. We've seen, and so forth. We've physically handled hundreds of the same cards over and over and over. And we know, that's a counterfeit. I had somebody bring in a Frank Thomas no name the other week that was real, but I've also had a number bring in counterfeits. And they love to know immediately, nope, this is not, And so, I'm not up on all the AI cutting edge stuff that they might be doing. And I look forward to hearing what comes out of their efforts. But I'm still old school. I would rather hand the card to a grader that I know has handled hundreds of that card that has graded those in the past and knows exactly what to look for, or I trust myself because I've handled so many of them. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's an interesting perspective. I do think conceptually AI and computer vision is going to be the future, but I
agree.
totally get the perception, and it may be a while until it is able to have all that same intuition and knowledge that the human graders have today, especially the experienced ones, and dealers such as yourself who have seen just so many cards over the years.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anything else, Joe, we should cover, from the grading standpoint?
Well, I'm still a strong advocate. We came out with a new marketing campaign called Just Grade It because there's so many reasons to have your cards graded. And one of the other things is that, as we've talked about price shifts in the industry as grading has come down, I don't see things really getting much lower. Like when PSA's cranking out 1 million cards a month, I think they've hit their sweet spot. I don't see a reason for them to really lower pricing anymore. And, I think they're probably at a pretty good number where, profitability and volume is a pretty good combination of where they're at.
Yeah.
I don't know that from anybody inside or anything. It just logically, it seems to make sense where they're at, the number they're turning out. So for those who've been sitting on the sidelines saying, well, I'm going to wait till it's $12, I'm going to wait till it's $10, whatever. I don't know that those days are ever coming back. So, if you have stuff, I have a long time customer for 32 years. He has a tremendous vintage collection, and he's still like, well, I'm just not in the grading. I'm like, if you ever want to really maximize your dollars, because he has some really high-end stuff, I'm like, if you want to maximize those dollars, now's the time to jump in and get it done.
I would agree. All right, Just Grade It. There you go. You heard it from Joe.
Right.
Just Grade It. Go to sportscardinvestor.com/grading, or go to sportscardinvestor.com, click grading in the main menu bar. That might be easier. And you can just grade it right there through Joe and his team at Got Baseball Cards. Joe, it's been a pleasure having you on the Geoff Wilson Show. Appreciate it. And thank you out there for everybody who watched. And don't forget, you can find these shows, full-length shows, on YouTube, as well as Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you'd prefer to listen to them on the go. Make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.